right. So with that, let's get started on our first topic of tonight, which is why do women's goalie knee? Why does this woman's goalie knees cave in? So the first thing we're going to talk about here is this came in from Joan Hippensteel. So we're doing a little video review here. Okay, and I'll just play this one forward. This is Devo Chip on Instagram. Okay, good little goalie. All right, working hard, and I love that. All right, so I like. I'll just play this. Just call it a couple seconds. All right, so a couple things I want to point out here is before we get going. So, uh, so. Not to sound sexist, as I feel like I always have to say this, but female goalies have different strength levels than male goalies, but also female goalies also have what's called a Q angle. And so a Q angle is the basically it's the geometry between where basically the hip bones, the width of the hip bones, the knees and the ankles and all that stuff. And what's really fascinating is so my wife, not fascinating, but my wife in this past year, so we ski a lot. And so my wife skis fairly knock-kneed. However, with some good strengthening of her quads and her hips and her hamstrings, that knocking of the knees has pretty much all gone away. All right. And so I want, if you haven't researched it, or looked at it, I'll try to find a link here that I can post in the comments so you guys can check it out. All right, I'll just paste this in here. This is just the Google search. But the idea here is that it's important to understand Q angle because it really matters for your athletes. So a lot of female athletes develop MCL, ACL sprains. Okay, Michael, and this is kind of like a ticking time bomb, right? So when you've got an athlete and they've got issues, and a lot of girls do, especially if they're late to sports or don't have a big variety of sport, and so they don't have really a I want to call it like a multi-purpose hip, if that makes sense. You know, this idea that female athlete is gonna run forward, backwards, whatever. So we can have an athlete who runs well in a straight line, who's got a pretty distinct Q angle, but then you ask them to move laterally, and they're at a disadvantage. Okay, so one of the things to understand is that as goalies, we're moving laterally. Okay. So if we took a line, from basically the shooter, the head of the stick here where the shooter is, and we run that line to the opposite post, okay, to the far post, okay, run that out here. All right. Now this angle is kind of weird, but it would be like this if we did it this way. Okay. If we took a drywall T-square and put it on the ground here, and this would give us the shortest distance between the points, it's a lateral move. It's not a forward move. Okay. And so, but the reason why I share that is because moving laterally puts all the pressure on the outside of the hip. Okay. And so if the muscles on the outside of the hip, glute med, things like that are weak, and in a lot of girls they are, then the body finds the body's incredible at you tell it what you want it to do, like go here, and it'll find a way to do that. It will basically, what it'll do is it'll morph, it'll move itself in such a way that it'll get to the strongest angles that it has, right? So so as we watch Dev here move, you'll see her knees cave, all right? And what that does, so there's a couple things going on here. Right. So the question here is like, why is this goalie's knees caving? Is it a strength? First, I'm disappointed. Now Dev's been playing for a while, and I have not worked with Dev, but I know Joanne, who's her coach. And the idea here is that one of the things so people always give me a hard time as a coach that I am too hard on athletes. And I have a couple beliefs, and the older I get, the more I just see them making more and more sense. One is like, you are either practicing good habits or you're practicing bad habits. And what happens is that if you let a bad habit start and you don't correct it, well, you are just wiring in so you're just putting a groove on that record with a really bad song. Okay. And so if the first groove goes down and it's not that deep, we can correct it and be like, oh, but that takes a coach to really be mindful of that. And what happens at a lot of camps and a lot of clinics is they fall into that more is the plan. We're just shooting. Oh, we got to just get shots in the goalie, more shots in the goalie, and then more shots in the goalie, and that's better than no shots in the goalie. But if those shots if the goalie is moving improperly to those shots, we got to catch the first one. Okay, we got to catch the first shot and the first move, and we got to correct it right there and say, no, this is how you got to do. And so what's happening here to Dev is that she's been given the opportunity to move a number of times kind of improperly. So here's the thing. When the ball is shot, so we're seeing the ball, we got to know where it's going, we got to move in front of it, right? See, no, move. When this particular shot, these shots are going far side, so that is a particular move. So if we're getting the wrong response, right? So we see the ball, we learn we know where it's going, and then we move. If the response to that move part is incorrect, we got to correct that. So these balls are going far side. So if I'm moving in front of that space, so what I do is I teach my goalies like, okay, we're basically dividing the net into 9 squares. Okay, it's going to be like this. All right, and it depends on the angle, obviously, what's going on here, right? But this is the 9 squares. So this ball is going over to one of these 2 squares. Well, we then don't need to cover the 5 hole. So if Dev is in fact pinching her knees together because she's trying to stop a 5-hole shot and she's worried about that first, then that's one option here, is that she's thinking that the ball is going to the 5-hole, but then it's going to the side. One of the things to understand about lacrosse is that there's not a lot of time to see, know, and move in front of the ball. And so some goalies, what they do is they develop these habits like, okay, I'm just being safe by covering this and I can still get to that. All right. So that's something that happens. And it's one of the things where if we coached it completely out of her and said, no, we don't want you to put your knees together because the ball is going side left. Well, if the ball goes to the center or it goes 5-hole and she's delaying that by a second, or and it's not a second, it's like 100th of a second. If she delays it by 100th of a second, maybe she can't get there, or maybe she got burned there in the past and she's just being safe. So some goalies, we get in these modes where we're kind of hedging our bets, right? And so maybe that's what she's doing here. Okay, but if I take a really strict approach to this and say, okay, the ball's going to off stick low, or actually this is stick side low for her, then this is not the response we want. So, but one of the things that I would just add here is this is not a very realistic drill or a shot for the women's game, right? We don't you don't see girls standing in this position facing this way, making the shot, like, and the goalie can see the stick head the whole time. Like, it's just not a very realistic example. Okay. And so that can also create some sloppiness. Okay. But this is where, a lot of coaches, like, if there's no shooters at this practice and it's just the coach and we're doing like a goalie only session, there's only so much a coach can do before the coach gets worn out. Okay. Is one thing, but specificity is important. So that's where, I tell a lot of my goalies, like, you'd be better off, like just getting a bunch of kids out to shoot on you, and let them run around for 5 minutes and then let them relax for 5 minutes, like whatever. But let's talk more specifically here. So the caving between the knee. All right. So if in fact she's hedging her bets, okay. So this is interesting here. The coach here sneaks a shot near side pipe, right? Now, one of the things that I can't stand it, and coaches have let this run by for years, is this watch the bottom hand. So her right hand, see how the stick pivots. Okay. This is a strength issue. Okay. This is a strength issue, but you see how she's like all twisted up here now, right? She's all twisted up. This is, to me, makes it lean more towards like an improper response to the ball. Okay. So she's not necessarily in a stable, relaxed, set position, and then moving from there. So that is a wiring issue. So the way we have to rewire this goalie to get more of a proper move. So what in the goalie's head though, there's it feels like an eternity of hesitation. All right. And she's going to miss balls. Like balls will go by as she thinks like, oh, I'm just waiting too long. Right. So this takes an incredible amount of rewiring of the goalie where we say, okay, we're just going to slow you down to where you're basically at a stop. And we are going to spend thousands of balls, thousands of repetitions wiring in the proper step, or proper move. So here, this pivot, okay, this is a strength issue. And I don't like the pivot because what it does is it takes a perfectly good piece of equipment out of there, right? It takes a perfectly good piece of equipment out of there. But the goalie feels like they're moving a ton. They're like, oh, look at me move. Like, look at this big move I made. When in fact, this is a core issue. So as I look more and more at this video, I would say that this goalie needs to spend a lot of time working on their strength. And so, some people say like, oh, we've got to do like planks and side planks and stuff like. No, I want this goalie squatting. I want this goalie learning how to squat and deadlifting and how to track her knee over her foot and getting around a qualified strength and conditioning coach who can teach that. This is where people get surprised because I don't say like go to a physical therapist or go to a trainer. I say like, a trainer can qualify here, but I want that trainer to have a strength and conditioning background because most strength and conditioning coaches have they have if they have a really good solid physical therapy. They understand mechanics, they understand movements, and this is where some physical therapists don't even get that. They understand it like on a very simple structural basis, but not with strength. They understand alignment. They don't understand strength and strength application. A strength and conditioning coach, a properly trained strength and conditioning coach who understands like force application, and a lot of those guys are football guys. Those guys are great to get around. And when you get a girl in front of a coach like that, man, it's not just about the physical improvement; it's also about the emotional, like the empowerment. When you teach a girl how to get strong, and just like explosive, man, it's and how to apply force. Like you just see the transformation in their head, all right, and that's really important to understand. Okay, Joel Rose asks a great question. Okay, will they make the same mistake if they don't retrain the movement but get stronger? Okay, that's a great question. Let's put it this way. If they are stronger, like if their base level of strength goes up and they understand how to apply force and that hip is stronger, they will. So what's happening here is that the body is going to where it feels strongest. And so on this next shot, right? Now, the coach, you guys can't hear the coach in the video, but there's a guy video here saying good punch. I hate that term. All right. I'm not teaching my goalie to punch to anything. I'm teaching my goalie to move in front of it. Now, words matter to me. When you say punch, to me, punch is out. Punch is like I'm just firing up at that ball and I don't care where the rebound goes. Because what happens here is this move here is actually, this first move is actually a lot smaller than the goalie thinks it is, right? She just has to move this stick literally 18 inches. I want to see that bottom hand anchor, that bottom elbow anchored on her side, and that stick is basically pivoting off the bottom hand, and it goes over. The stick ends up this way, not this way. All right. Does that make sense? Can you guys see that? All right. So if we go like this, you see where she ends up? She ends up ball crossed up. I don't want that. This is a very simple, just pop right across the front of the face, right? Very simple save. So I commend the coach for sneaking this ball in there. This is good. All right. But overall, but on the second clip, all right, on the second clip, let me just clean my video up here. On the second clip, all right, as she's moving now to her stick side, the knees pinch because so right here before even she's lowering. You see that? She's lowering there. All right. So right here in the set position, I would like to see her get her knees further out a little bit. However, she's not going to want to do that if she feels strong. And she might not even know she feels weak. It's just the body is going to that. Okay. But now, as she goes that far side, right, the coach steps wide, which changes the angle, and that's cool. But now those knees are basically pinching together. So the other option here is she's afraid of getting hit, because both the boys and the girls do what I call not the nuts save. All right. Not the balls, not the lady balls. Right. And those knees come together like, ow. I don't want to, like, because seriously, like, it's not fun getting hit off the inside of the thigh. Right. And so getting the knees together gets the pad. Like, if she's wearing thigh pads here or sweatpants, like, she feels more protected. But if she's resistant to getting hit, then the knees are going to come together because she just doesn't want to get hit there, right? So, and now one of the things that happens is that sometimes young athletes don't know why they do certain things. So if I ask Dev, like, Dev, why do you do that? She'll be like, I don't know. Or she may then say, like, well, I do it because of XYZ. And that might not even be the right answer, right? That's no, not no offense to Dev's, like, her her mentality, her thinking, her intelligence. It's just, we just don't always know. Because if the brain is in high beta and she's worried about getting hit a little bit, then she can't think through that, right? And that's true of anybody. It's why someone who's in a car accident doesn't know, like, what exactly happened. It's because their brain shifted into high beta and they were like, I was just in survival mode. And she may think, like, hey, I get out here every day, I take shots, like, I can't possibly be in survival mode. But she might be. Okay. But the other thing that I look for here is the fact that she, that knee, all right, that knee then tweaks out, right? It then tweaks out again. So this to me is protective. This to me then is like, oh, now I'm moving. Now I'm getting the femur and the hip joint better. Like, I get more I can sit more in the glutes, and now I can move from there. Okay, but this is where too lacrosse goalies feel like they're moving, but they haven't moved at all. And if you look at her left knee, okay, if you look at her left knee and her foot being extended, this is where a goalie feels like they've stepped, but they haven't stepped at all. All right. Right. They haven't stepped at all. So that, watch her left foot, not as we looked at it, like this one, and her left knee. Okay. Watch this. All right. All she basically does is extends the leg. Right. And then now she moves into it. But that's all after the fact. So there's not a lot but then she ends up with the adjustment step and goes, hey, great step. Good job. Okay. All right. So here again, there's the pinch. Right. And the pinch may be protective. All right. And now she doesn't even need a step because that ball is being shot right to her left foot, right? There's no need for a step there. So I think what we're noticing here on this goalie is a combination of strength, a combination of protection, lack of protection, and a combination of wiring. It's my favorite hashtag. I'm about to swear, so I apologize. My favorite hashtag is multifactorial causation of fuck-upness, right? So pardon me, kids, but Coach Edwards swears occasionally. All right. But right. So there's not one thing. So here's what I would do here with this goalie. One, I would demand in practice that she shows up with baseball shin guards and some thigh pads. And we're going to take shots without the stick. And because this goalie is relying too much on the stick to make saves, and the steps behind it, the movement behind it is all off. All right. Great comment here. I don't know who this is, but preaching now, it was a total game changer for me to train with a football coach in the weight room during high school. I still wasn't good at sports, but it was such a crucial self-realization moment when I realized I could lift too. Who is that? That's a great comment. Who is that? That's a great comment. I can't see who that is. Who is that? Who is that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Oh, I can't tell who that is. Mary Horowitz. Gotcha. I see you, Mary. Ken Schwander. I see you guys. David Emerson, Emmenhauser. I see you, buddy. Okay. Um, Mary, thanks for that. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So yeah, it's total game changer. So what would I do with this goalie? I would encourage this goalie. So let's say this goalie has limited resources, like limited funds, and they've got like another travel team they're going to play with. Okay. And I would almost say like, okay, listen, if you take 90 days, like let's say you don't have enough time and you don't have enough money or you don't have water, you just don't have to, like I would put this goalie in not like 90 days of 4 days a week strength training and with a qualified strength and conditioning coach with a football background. And she would come back to me in 90 days, a completely different athlete to be able to work with. Okay. So this is where, again, more is not a plan. We say like, oh, you should be playing lacrosse. And she may think like, I don't want to miss out playing lacrosse. I'll be left behind. No, you go off, especially with the girls, you go off and you work your tail off and learn how to squat and deadlift and lunge and all this stuff. We're going to make you a better athlete. The athletes that I see that just spend all this time playing lacrosse, or it doesn't have to be lacrosse, it can be any sport, they end up susceptible to knee injuries and ankle sprains and all this stuff, MCL, ACL work, because they don't have that strength background, because they haven't taken the time to really focus on it. Now, sometimes they say like, well, no, we're doing lacrosse and we're doing that. Well, sometimes it's better to just take a step back, to take 10 steps forward than to just keep doing and doing and doing and doing and doing. I saw this ridiculous comment this week in another group where some dad posted how his son had played 21 lacrosse games in 10 days and was burned out. And I'm like, duh, or he got injured. I can't remember what it was, but it's just silly. So you got to understand that, all right, let's take this athlete and let's get her physically strong. Okay. All right. Then let's get her padded up for practice. And we're going to work on making saves without the stick with the legs. All right. Because that will change how we move, right? Like, because if she's protected, like if this knee pinch is because she's worried about getting hit, well, I want to get her padded up so that she understands that if she were to make that save, that she doesn't have to fear it. Then her brain goes, oh, okay, great, I don't have to pinch my legs together because I'm not worried about getting hurt. But if a ball went there, I'm now being proactive over the ball. I'm not being fearful of it. Okay. I'm not being reactive to it. I'm being proactive in front of it. That's different. And then finally, with all that, with the strength, with the protection, now we can work on movement and proper movement, because as I showed you in that clip, like basically right here, this save is wide, and she's got to move in front of it. That's an okay move, but again, we just want to, if we're looking at complete efficiency, complete response to the ball, like no wasted motion, this isn't it. Okay, this isn't it. But again, this is a very weird, unique shot, because most likely this shot is going to happen with her, like the shooter coming across the front of the cage. But if she's pinching, then that's probably a protection issue. It's probably a little bit of a fear issue. And it's a bit of a misread on this next shot. All right, this is where that shot goes right to her left foot. There's no need to move the foot, right? Literally, my leg's there. It's in front of the space. She technically takes her foot out of the way, and this to me shows a goalie that's kind of not thinking. She's thinking like that's. I don't want to say that, like she's doing the work, but is it the right work? And the answer there would probably be no. Okay. But this is where a lot of times, girls they just put in the work and they're conscientious. They don't want to disappoint anybody. They want to put in the reps and they want to be there. But it's like, wait a second. This is where coaches have to be like, we're filling you full of bad habits. And I think in the situation here, there's one coach who's like, these other coaches are letting her fill in with bad habits. And then I got to fix her. That's probably what's kind of going on here. All right. So who's this? What if the goalie already wears thigh pads and knee shin guards? Does removing the stick and making leg saves still the corrective action? Well, think of this. Okay, so great question, by the way. Whoever wrote that. Okay, I can't see who that is. David Ammenhauser. I see it. Okay. So So the way lacrosse goaltending was always taught was and this is where I've been critical, is like, we got to get the stick there and then get the body behind the stick. No, no. The job is we've got to get something into that space first. And the closest thing to that is in this case, is the left leg, right? It's the left leg, it's the knee or whatever. And so the idea then is, do we um, um, so how do we teach that? Well, I need to get the left foot into that space, the left knee into that space as my stick's coming there. So to do that, I have to be really strong in my right hip to be able to fire off. And if I'm causing the knee to cave, if the knee is caving, that's taking time, right? So, but that's where the body, if they're caving because it's a protection issue, the caving should go away. If it's caving because the body is just trying to get there to feel stronger, which is what it does a lot of times, then and that's complicated. It's hard to explain that, but the idea is the body is trying to get a better angle of attack, right? And then they're moving. But when she brings the hip back out, right? When she brings the knee back out, then what that tells me is like, no, she can get some strength in that hip, but it's not, to me, it's not authoritative. Does that make sense? So if we take the stick away, now we only have the option to get the leg there, right? But we're only going to put the leg there if we feel protected. So this is where, like, I try to play the mental games with the goalie and go like, wait a second, well, what is it? And if the goalie goes, well, I don't want to put my foot there, I'll get hurt. Then that defeats the purpose of being a goalie, right? Like that's not what we're about. And so that's usually when goalies say like, I don't want to wear protection. I'm like, well, then can you make this save? This is the save. Like, I'm 6 yards away, his ball's off stick low. The only thing you can do is put your left foot there. Will you do it? Well, I'll do it in a game, but not in practice. No, that's not training. That's not wiring in a goalie. Right? Does that make sense? So I think if you take the stick away and there's protection, then the goalie should be able to move there, but it's got to be the appropriate level of protection, right? Like if a goalie's just wearing those dinky Nike shin guards because she saw them this summer league and they look cool, then and she makes one save, but then that hurts and she doesn't want to make a second one. That's silly, right? Then we're not protected enough. This is where you just got to ask your goalie. All right, listen. And for those of you guys have my lacrosse goalie, my cheat sheets and my manifesto in there, I have the lacrosse goalie manifesto, right? And I say the goalie, and you can print it off and have a goalie sign it. It's just, all right, listen, I'm here to put something in front of the ball. Right? Something in front of the ball. And when you start just doing the math, it's certain, like we can't get our stick to everything. Right. So it's like, okay, are you going to put your shin there? Right. And that's the question to ask. Okay. So David, great question. Appreciate that. All right, guys, thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.